Good evening. This is the Channel 1 News. The issue of the army is no longer a military but now a political issue. Will it be a stabilizing factor or become embroiled in interethnic conflict? The issue is of the fate not only of the Commonwealth but of each individual republic. At a meeting of the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Moscow, the foundation has been set for continuing dialogue, according to both sides. Units of the Soviet Army are not participating in the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, Marshal Shapechnikov testifies. The collision of our Northern Fleet nuclear submarine with the American submarine occurred within the sea borders of Russia, according to military personnel. The news of the day. Cosmonauts Volkov and Krikalev are preparing for a spacewalk at this hour. Tonight at midnight, all Russian air traffic controllers may stop work. Following Komsomolskaya Pravda, the newspaper Trud did not appear today. Now 30 minutes of news, events, and information. Today in Moscow, there was a meeting of the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia. The mediator in negotiations was Russia. In diplomatic circles, hope is now being expressed that Moscow can revive the Zheleznovodsk communique signed by Armenia and Azerbaijan at the end of September. The results of the meeting were more modest than hopes, but they are still hopeful. The meeting lasted for 8 hours between the foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia, which, according to the sides, laid the foundation for resolving the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. As a result of the meeting, a communique was adopted which emphasizes the immediate need for a ceasefire in the combat zone and the end of communication and road blockades. In a discussion with journalists, the Armenian Foreign Minister Rafi Avanesyan said that the problem of Karabakh is not a territorial or religious issue, but an issue of human rights. The minister emphasized that any document signed without the participation of Karabakh residents is doomed to fail. Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Gusein Agas Adikov said it was a great achievement that both sides recognized the need to observe all requirements of Helsinki agreements, including territorial integrity, inviolability of borders, and the no use of force or threat of use of force. Both ministers thanked Russia for its mediation mission. At the same time, alarming reports continue to come in from Nagorno-Karabakh. Last night, Armenian armed units attacked an Azerbaijani village from Gori and Kafan regions of Armenia. The city of Shusha again came under fire. There are casualties there. Today in Moscow, President of Armenia, Levon Petrosyan, arrived. He will meet at 6 p.m. He met at 6 p.m. with Boris Yeltsin. Marshal Shapechnikov also participated in this closed-door meeting. We now have no information about this meeting. The Azerbaijani diplomatic mission reports that Azerbaijani President Mutalibov is not expected to come to Moscow. The conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh concerns not only Russia but other neighboring countries. Turkish Prime Minister Demirel said in an interview that it is necessary to devote attention to the Central Asian republics of the CIS because instability could arise in this area. Iranian Foreign Minister Velaiti intends to visit Armenia and Azerbaijan this week, bringing compromise proposals to resolve the conflict. The future of the army has become a political issue. The army is largely a hostage to politics and politicians. Units of Soviet Army are deployed in many hotspots today. The 366th Mobile Infantry Company in Nagorno-Karabakh, volunteers of the Russian Legion in Tskhin-Valley, the Transcaucasian Group of Forces in Georgia are only a few elements of the same large problem. The situation in Nagorno-Karabakh is explosive. Attempts are being made to draw Russian soldiers into the conflict. This was discussed today at the Russian Supreme Soviet. Chief Commander of the CIS forces, Marshal Shapechnikov, gave the deputies an explanatory statement in which he said, and this statement was also given to the Commonwealth leaders, he said that the development of events in the Transcaucasian region is concerning all of the states which border Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Chief Command of the Unified Armed Forces of the Commonwealth considers it necessary to take steps to prevent troops from being drawn in and to prevent the escalation of the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. To this end, we believe it is necessary to resolve the following issues. The first, to use all political authority and ability of the leaders of the Commonwealth of Independent States to resolve the problem of Nagorno-Karabakh by political methods. Number two, before the resolution of this conflict, to refrain from creating individual armed forces in the states of the Transcaucasian region. Number three, to consider the issue of forming a contingent of intergovernmental CIS forces, which would be subordinate to CIS member heads of state, in order to maintain order, stabilize the situation, and permit the solution of the conflict by political means. In terms of the collision of submarines in the Barents Sea, Marshal Shapashnikov reported that this is the first violation of by an American submarine in recent years of our territorial waters. Then he said, "We are concerned by the fact that this region has been defined by us as our training facility. The American side knows about this, that this is our training facility. There is nothing for a foreign military ship to do on our training waters." The foreign border of our territorial waters is along this line shown on the map. The collision occurred at these coordinates which I am now showing. This clearly confirms that the collision occurred within the territorial waters of our country. This event, in the opinion of Northern Fleet specialists, violates Articles 3, 4, and 7 of the UN Convention on Maritime Law. And although our submarine suffered no significant damage, this fact still causes concern. Of course, every sovereign state has the right to have its own army. The meeting in Minsk showed that the unified CIS armed force is not going to happen, but the army is a force whose interests must be considered. Hasty and spontaneous steps are dangerous. History confirms this. February 1917, the Russian army and the people as a whole are caught up in revolutionary enthusiasm. At the front, there is fierce agitation. Units are abandoning their positions. In the cities, crowds of reservists are marching with revolutionary slogans. Forces are being urged to disobey their commanders. Each political party is trying to bring the military onto its side. Everyone understands that in a collapsing country without laws and authoritative leaders, the army is the only force with which to hold power. In these conditions, the provisional government, wanting to attract soldiers, issues famous Decree Number 1, in accordance with which they can now choose their own commanders, repeal the orders of the main command, not honor their officers, and use weapons as they see fit. The self-serving and short-sighted politicians are bringing about the total degradation of the army of many millions of soldiers. Soldiers do not know whom to obey because everyone is issuing orders, soldiers' committees, the provisional government, and the Soviets. The attempt to have soldiers sign a new oath is ending in failure. Some are refusing to swear on the Tsarist banner. They demand its replacement. Others will swear allegiance to no one. There is mass desertion. Crowds of armed people are wandering through the countryside. Along with political prisoners, criminals and anarchists have been set free. They are stealing weapons and terrorizing the population. After the seizure of power by the Bolsheviks, the Russian army fully and finally collapses. Defenseless, Russia becomes an easy mark for its former enemies and allies. According to the Brest Peace, Germany, which could not defeat Russia in open battle, gains without any expense 27% of the land, 33% of the factories, 75% of the coal, and demands $3 billion in bread and mineral resources in order to defend its national interests. The Japanese, the English, and Americans introduced their forces into the dying country. On July 18th, 1918, in the harbor near Novorossiysk, Lenin orders that the main seen the most powerful ships of the Black Sea Fleet be sunk, officially so they don't fall into the hands of the Germans, but really because the government feared its own, the White Forces. In 1919, the Ukrainian Directorate, under the leadership of Ivanchenko, demands that the French turn over all the ships in Sevastopol. In Georgia and Armenia, they are forming their own armies and dividing up the Russian army's properties. Civil war erupts. Yesterday's members of a single militia are cruelly shooting one another. There's a hunt on for all officers. This will bring Russia many millions of new deaths and 4 years of bloody anarchy. This is the price that our people paid for the collapse of its army. The newspaper Red Star printed today the text of the agreement by the CIS countries on the creation of a unified defense budget and the procedure for financing military forces. The document provides payments to active duty military personnel of 500 rubles upon their discharge, 2,000 if they have no parents to support them. We continue the team of the social protection of the military. The city is constructing and giving out 300,000 square meters of living space for the officer corps.